Welcome to the Exam Room Live, brought to you by the Physicians Committee. Hi, I am the weight loss champion, Chuck Carroll. We appreciate you joining us to help make the world a healthier place. Gaining weight, getting healthier, getting a little bit bigger around the abdomen, maybe in the backside, maybe the belly. Is it just an inevitable part of getting older? Like, is there anything we can really do to stave off packing on the pounds once we hit 40? Well, a study out of the UK says that middle-aged men say, hey, weight gain is inevitable no matter what it is that we do. So that is what we will be talking about here on the show today. Is getting heavier a natural part of aging? And we're going to be joined by Dr. Neal Barnard here on the Exam Room Live in just a little bit. We're also going to be opening up the doctor's mailbag. So that is your opportunity to ask Dr. Barnard anything that is on your mind. So if you want to drop something in that mailbag, you can post your question in the comment or in the chat. You can also send it to me on Twitter or Instagram anytime. I'm at Chuck Carroll, WLC. So let's go ahead and welcome Dr. Barnard to the Exam Room Live. Sir, good to see you again.
Great to see you, Chuck.
And I think weight gain, correct me if I'm wrong, that is something that you covered in your Body in Balance as we get older, correct?
Yes, that's right. And I'm so glad that you introduced it in the way you did, because many people have this idea that it's just something you're stuck with.
Well, today we're going to try to, poke a little hole in that balloon here. But let's talk about this study first out of the UK. And there was a quote from one of the participants that really stuck with me, really kind of spoke to the old overweight version of myself. And this gentleman said, what gets me the worst is going to buy clothes. You go into a shop, you see a really nice suit, and you know that they won't have it in your size. He says, I have a size 54 chest, and it's just getting ridiculous. This has to stop. But the same gentleman was among more than a handful who said, no matter what I do, I'm going to pack on the pounds because of stress at home and stress at the job. So the first question, Dr. Barnard, comes to us from Howard, and it is, are you genetically more likely to gain weight once you hit middle age?
Oh, that's a great question, and it's on so many people's minds because that's really their experience. And this is true for kind of anybody. A guy is getting a little bit, what he thinks is he's a little older because he's now 45 or 50. And between perhaps raising children, demands at work, maybe less physical activity, he notes he's gaining a little bit of weight. But a woman hits menopause and she thinks, wow, with all of the changes I'm going through, I noticed that I don't lose weight as easily as I did before. And so people often imagine that it's got to be sort of genetic programming that I'm going to gain weight. However, we've intervened in these cases, and we've actually put diets to work. And I'm not talking calorie cutting diets, and I'm not talking massive exercise programs or that kind of thing. What we've used instead is really two things. Avoiding the animal products completely. So it's vegan diet, but also keeping the fatty foods really low, even the sort of healthier fats, the vegetable oils, as well as the animal fats. When people do those two things together, I don't care how old you are, the weight does tend to come off. And perhaps just as important or more important is that it tends to stay off. So it's not just a weight loss diet on a temporary basis. It's getting down to the weight that you want to be and staying there.
A lot of people will say, well, I'm getting older, my metabolism is slowing down. And so they'll look at metabolism then almost exclusively as a reason why they are gaining weight. How much stock should be put into a slow metabolism when it comes to weight gain?
Well, it can be slow. And the reason people will say that is, I used to eat the same thing when I was 16 and I didn't have any problem. And now that I'm 46 or whatever it is, now I just look at it and I start to gain weight. And their metabolism may actually have slowed down. What they're missing is that it didn't slow down because of something on the clock. It slowed down in part because of what they are eating. Here's how it works. You eat some greasy thing, chicken wings or cheese or steak or even fried, things like French fries. The fat from those foods gets into your cells, and that causes not just insulin to not work, as we've talked about before, but it makes your mitochondria not work. Now, when I say mitochondria, people might remember from their high school biology, those are the burners inside your cells. You pack the fat in, your burners inside your cells, they're not tearing up the calories anymore. And the answer to it is to get all that fat out of your diet. That allows your burners to recover. And so your metabolism will recover to a degree when you make these changes. It happens rather rapidly, and it's especially noticeable in the after meal period. So that after breakfast, after lunch, after dinner, you're going to be burning calories faster.
Wow, that's free calorie burn right there, man. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Take a question from Kim. Oh boy, this is a good one. Dr. Barnard, Kim is wondering whether it's possible that some diets work for some people, but not others.
Well, that is a great question. All diets can create, or I guess I should say that all diets can have little bumps in the road here or there, even a really healthy vegan diet. Let's say a person does it and they're in a group of another 12 people and 11 of them are losing weight like crazy. They're on a vegan diet, they're keeping the oils low, everything is going great, they're losing a pound or 2 pounds this week and the same next week, and then you're the 12th person. And it's not happening for you, and you're thinking, why not? We see this all the time. So simple solution. What we do is we say, let's take a piece of paper, write down everything that you've eaten for the past day. And then we look for the contraband. And what we discover is the person says, oh, you mean fish? That's not part of the diet. No, I thought I needed the fatty fish for the omega-3 or something like that. Okay, get that out. The weight loss starts. Or it could be something like guacamole. Avocado is a healthier kind of fat than animal fat for sure. But like all fats, it has 9 calories per gram. So if I'm trying to lose weight, even the avocado toast, I'm going to kind of shrink that a little bit. So you discover what it is that's getting in the way, and people do well. So if it's not animal products, it's sometimes nuts or oils or something like that. But then with other diets, the more conventional, old-fashioned kind of diet, you're getting the assignment that you should cut calories, eat 800 calories a day, and you think it worked for the guy on TV, but for me, I'm ready to eat the sofa. Frankly, nobody can starve, day after day after day after day. Eventually, your appetite is just going to grab a hold of the refrigerator and tear it open.
Well, kind of along those lines, I want to take a question now from Melissa, who's wondering whether you can still lose weight while eating a large quantity of low-fat, low-calorie, whole food, plant-based foods.
If a person's trying to lose weight, and if you're eating grains and beans and vegetables and fruits, and you don't have added fat, those foods, even if you eat abundant amounts of them, are going to help the weight come off for 2 reasons. The first is that they're very low in what we call caloric density. You're getting a lot of fiber, a lot of complex carbohydrates, and these foods just don't have a whole lot of calories. The calories are packed into the animal fat and into the oils, and those foods aren't there. So you're going to fill up sooner, and the weight's going to come off for that reason. And then the second thing is, if you've been doing this for several days, your metabolism does ramp up, as I was describing before, and it's really hard to avoid losing weight unless you're really pushing the foods a lot, way beyond your satiety threshold.
Yeah, that's kind of a tricky one. I think back to if I were in that position when I was still 420, I'm wondering whether it would still be a good idea to gorge on food if it were still healthy, even if it were healthy, right? Because I think at that point, you're still kind of entertaining the idea of unhealthy habits. As I say, too much of a good thing is still too much, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I do agree. And what I've been describing now is a person who's responding to their appetite cues. So you're full, you stop. But if a person is really pushing beyond the amounts and their stomach is saying, hey, look, I've had enough. And Chuck, I know that you and I have talked about this before, and you've experienced this, and other people have too. At that point, you really do have to say, okay, I've got to stop now. I have to find some way so that I'm not really just gorging beyond the limits. But for most people, the foods that we've described, fruits and so forth, they've got fiber that fills you up. They got a lot of water that fills you up. If instead of those low calorie, very filling foods, you eat a high calorie food like cheese, meat, by the time it fills you up, you have had a lot of calories. So avoiding those that's kind of job 1.
Yeah, don't I know it? And I think that when a person is in a position where they have been overeating for so many years, the risk of them, if even if they have good intentions with eating large quantities of healthier foods, the odds of them reintroducing something like cheese or ice cream or hamburgers or steak, French fries, whatever the case may be, it's pretty high. And so then, as you just said, they're going to eat that same amount. They're going to really fill up and then some on those high fat, high calorie foods, and it's just going to worsen the problem. So, there's a lot there also from a psychological standpoint that we don't necessarily need to address today. But I mean, it does kind of go to the fact that weight loss can be like a really complicated issue.
It really can be. And I have to say, I really like the idea of keeping a short-term focus. A person doesn't have to think, what am I going to eat in the year 2055? Let's focus on today. Let's focus on the next couple of days. And I've heard you say, if I'm kind of a food addict and today is my first day without the food I crave, I'm going to not have such a hot day today. I'm going to feel kind of crummy. And I just resolve myself to it. That's the way today's going to be. I'm going to miss it, but it passes. You're going into the tunnel. You're going to come out of the tunnel. And when you do, you're going to feel so much better because you've broken free.
All right, let's talk about BMI here. I'm curious, what do we know typically here when it comes to the BMI of those eating a vegetarian or even a whole food plant-based diet versus those who are eating the standard American diet?
We got some really good information from the Adventist Health Study. And Seventh-day Adventists have been under the microscope of researchers for decades and decades because they are just everybody's favorite population to study. Huge number of people, in California especially, but elsewhere too, and almost entirely non-smokers, almost entirely teetotalers. So they're great to study. And what they have found is that within this group, they vary quite widely in diet. For religious reasons, they're supposed to be health conscious. Vegetarian diets are smiled on, but they're not followed by everybody. Within that population, what you see is that comparing meat eaters, people who eat meat every day, to a person who eliminates, say, red meat and has just chicken, fish, and maybe the next group would be just people who eat fish. The next group down would be people who don't eat any meat at all, but they have dairy products and eggs, and ovo-lacto vegetarian. And finally, vegans, no animal products at all. When you go down those 5 steps, what you see is the BMI just drops. Everybody's eating the foods they want. They're eating until they are full. They're totally satisfied. Their physical activity may not differ very much, but the plant-based diet is good for several BMI points, much lower than the person who's a meat eater, and much lower even than a person who's a lacto-ovo vegetarian. That's the cheese effect. So yeah, BMI very, very strongly dependent on the dietary pattern you're following.
You're talking about Adventist. I was talking recently on the show about the longevity aspect of one of those studies. I think this one was done out in Loma Linda, and it looked at life expectancy for vegans and vegetarians compared to those eating the standard diet. And for women, it was more than 6 years. For men, it was 9.5 years, I do believe. So I would think that the lower BMI would be a big factor as to why we're seeing those extra trips around the sun.
All those things, they all go together. Your BMI goes down, the cholesterol goes down with it, blood pressure goes down with it. The risk of diabetes, it tracks with this, partly because people are thinner, they're at less diabetes risk, but even if they're the same weight, the diabetes risk is lower for people on a plant-based diet. And certain cancers are less common. So all of these things, they help with longevity and they help with the different health issues that can complicate later life too.
I've gotten this question a lot over the years as well. You just said diabetes. It popped into my mind. Question about sugar and weight gain. Is there a connection distinctly between eating an abundance of sugar, a really sugary diet, and packing on the pounds? Or is sugar kind of just a byproduct, by and large, of fatty foods?
Sugar is an interesting thing. Your body is actually designed to run on sugar. Now, the sugar I'm speaking of is glucose, and it's in fruits, and it's in starchy vegetables. The starch breaks apart to release glucose, and it goes into your blood, and it powers your brain. That's what your brain wants. That's the healthy fuel for your body. Glucose is very clean burning fuel. Your muscles work on it. A person who's going to run a marathon next week, they are carbo loading today. They're putting sugar, glucose, into their liver and into their muscles in the form of glycogen. So the point is, sugar is not a bad thing, but it's gotten a bad rep because people take sugar and they mix it into cookies along with butter and shortening. And frankly, that's where the calories really are. So people will blame the carbs, but it's really the hidden fats that are the biggest driver of weight gain. And we see this with cakes, pies, a lot of baked goods, and many other things. Now, having said that, I don't want people to imagine that sugar is always totally innocuous. If you take a Coca-Cola or a Pepsi or something, those kinds of things, they're not actually the biggest driver of weight gain, but that's just a bunch of sugar that the body doesn't really need at all.
We talked about nuts and avocados a little bit earlier. Patricia's wondering specifically, though, about some other high-fat plant foods and chia and flax seeds. Do you need to be cautious with those as well when you're trying to lose weight?
Not in the portions that that people usually have. They have maybe a tablespoon or something like that. They throw on the amount of fat in that is really quite modest. If you have about an entire ounce of chia seeds, it's maybe 9 grams of fat, something like that. And so a person's not going to use that much.
Nonetheless, I can virtually guarantee there are people hearing this right now, watching this right now. They're like, okay, well, even still, what are some alternate sources for omega-3s? We talked a lot about the importance of them the last time you were on the show.
Yeah. Oh, and don't get me wrong, chia is fine and flax seeds are fine. But I got to tell you, my favorite omega-3 source is the last one anyone would think of, and that is green leafy vegetables. What? They don't have any fat at all in them, do they? Well, actually, if you send some broccoli to the lab, they will tell you it's about 7 or 8% fat. And a very large proportion of that fat is omega-3. What matters is not so much how much fat you're eating. Let me put it this way. If you're eating a lot of fat, you're going to gain weight. But from a health standpoint, what your body wants is a high proportion of your fat as omega-3. So if you're not getting very much fat because you're avoiding the added fats, but the traces of fat you're getting are the ones from green leafy vegetables, that's really high omega-3 proportionately. And that's what's going to help your body. Now, so you can do it with green leafy vegetables. You can do it with flax and chia. That's fine. Some people will do it with supplements if you want, but most people don't really need to do that. They do sell the vegan DHA supplements, vegan EPA supplements. They're just like fish oil, just without the smell. So you can do that. One last point. There has been a literature that people are looking at about whether the omega-3s can protect against Alzheimer's. We don't have that question yet, but some studies have suggested that people whose diets are really low in omega-3s might be at higher risk. But when people go to the store and they buy fish oil and they start supplementing, it turns out that some of these, at least for the guys, their risk of prostate cancer goes up from the omega-3 supplementing, the DHA and EPA. What do we do? Nobody knows the exact answer yet, but what some people are doing is not supplementing until they test. You can test. There are many companies. One is called Omega Quant. You go on their website, you pay them a certain amount of money. They send you a test kit, put a drop of blood on a card, you send it back, and a week or two later, they tell you, here is your omega-3 level. And if you're where you want to be, you throw the card away and stop worrying about it. If you're low, you could decide if you want to restore your levels with, say, a vegan EPA DHA supplement. A lot of people do that, but again, we got to be cautious about it. We still don't know entirely whether that is going to be beneficial over the long run. We're not fully sure about what the risks may be.
I want to stick with Alzheimer's right now. We're talking about people feeling like weight gain is inevitable as they get older. And I think that then they're concerned about other chronic diseases. You get heavier, you worry about having a heart attack. But what do we know about the connection between obesity and Alzheimer's disease. Does that increase the risk?
Yes, it does. I'm sorry to say obesity makes so many things worse. Yes, it will increase the risk of Alzheimer's. It will increase the risk of type 2 diabetes, which in turn will approximately double the risk of Alzheimer's. Obesity, interestingly enough, reduces the risk of breast cancer up until menopause, and we don't know entirely why that is, but after menopause goes exactly the opposite direction. If you're carrying that extra weight into menopause, you're at much higher risk of breast cancer. So the answer to it really is we do want to keep a healthier weight at every stage of life.
Premenopausal, there are also healthier ways to reduce a woman's risk of getting breast cancer, correct?
Yes, and the vast majority of breast cancers occur in the postmenopausal period. So you don't want to be carrying extra weight into it, or to put it the other way, you don't want to have extra weight as a young woman hoping that extra weight will in some way reduce your risk of breast cancer. It just increases the risk of everything else.
Let's switch gears. Take a question from Peter. This is an interesting one. Wondering whether it's harder to lose weight if a person is dehydrated. Do we know anything about a connection there?
Well, yeah, many people have this experience where they're noticing that they're eating, and it may be that they weren't actually hungry. They might have neglected to fill their water glass, and so they're actually just thirsty. And the way they discover it is if they've kind of been neglecting this, they start making sure they've got a bottle of water with them or a glass of water, and they find that they're snacking less and less because they were just pulling the snacks out of their drawer to make up for the water they were missing. Apart from that, I'm not aware of any relationship between dehydration and weight gain. It's really just eating when you ought to be drinking some water.
All right. Mary wants brass tacks answers here. She's like, gentlemen, you're doing a great job, but I need to know specifically, can Dr. Barnard rattle off a few more foods specifically that are really good for weight loss?
Okay, sure. Well, first of all, that's a great question, and I love making things practical. Okay, let's break them into three categories. The first category is you need foods that will tame your appetite. I'm now going to push away from the table. Plant-based foods are great, and the ones that matter the most are the high fiber foods. Fiber doesn't have calories, fills you up. So I am going to pick blueberries as maybe one of my favorites here. They're a really high fiber food, but frankly, you can do this with whole grain foods like brown rice. You can do it with fruits and others. But blueberries are a good one because not only do they have a lot of fiber in them, the neglected berry group has also the dark color. The dark color in a blueberry, that's from anthocyanins, and anthocyanins are very slight metabolism boosters in the bargain. So I've got the fiber to help me to reach satiety for maybe a couple hundred calories sooner. Now the other thing is my metabolism is boosting, and I mentioned blueberries, anthocyanins helping there. Another one, cinnamon. It's not magic, but cinnamon has been tested a lot, and it does seem to be real. It has a slight metabolism boosting effect and blood sugar lowering effect as well. But to tell you the truth, for the metabolism boost, any low-fat, high-starch food will help. Sweet potatoes, great. Bananas, great snack. No fat in there, lots of healthy complex carbohydrate, and that will give you a little bit of a metabolism boost for a couple hours after you eat it. Third category, if cravings have got you, you need something that will substitute for the craving. So for all the cheese addicts in the world, and there are this is everybody's issue, go to the store, get some nutritional yeast. You know this already, Mary, I'm sure. Nutritional yeast on your pizza beats the socks off of cheese toppings. Virtually no fat, virtually no calories. You get that cheesy taste. Another example, chocolate. Calls your name, it's 8:30 at night, you're raiding the refrigerator. If a person gets the cocoa powder, you've probably seen this. You make a little bit of a little sauce with it. The fat has been gone, but you dip the strawberry or the banana into that little sauce that you've made, and you eat that, and it's really kind of a delectable, kind of sophisticated dessert. You serve it to friends, they're going to think you're really cool, but it gives you the taste with none of those hidden calories. So there are a few for you.
All right. If somebody's listening to the show or watching us live for the very first time today, they're going to be like, you need to go back to that second thing he was talking about. He said, eat starchy foods. Starchy foods equal carbohydrates. Did he really just say eat carbohydrates to be at a healthy weight? So when it comes to carbs and weight loss and maintaining a healthy weight, where are the majority of us going wrong?
Okay. Let's take a trip to Tokyo. And let's go back in time to the 1960s. There, you had a country that was eating carbs like crazy. It was a rice-based diet with more rice and more rice and more rice. Some meat, not very much, really no dairy, and not much oil. And they were the thinnest, healthiest people on the planet. Luckily, they hadn't read the Atkins book, which says if you eat rice, you're going to gain weight. They ate huge amounts of it, never gained weight until McDonald's arrived in Tokyo, Burger King, dairy products came in, and people ate less rice, more fatty foods. They started to gain weight. How do I understand this? Fats have 9 calories per gram. Carbohydrates have only 4. And the reason people blame bread or potatoes for weight gain is because when the bread comes out of the toaster, the butter goes on. When the potatoes come out of the oven, on it goes the sour cream and the butter and all the fatty toppings. It's the fatty toppings that add the calories. French fries, potato chips. You can call them carbs if you want, but from a nutritional standpoint, what it is a sponge filled with grease. And every gram of fat carries 9 calories right down your esophagus.
A sponge filled with grease.
Appetizing, eh?
That just sounds delectable. Okay, we haven't yet talked about a lot of the processed plant-based foods. You know, you go to the store these days, especially in the frozen food aisle, and the freezers are just lined floor to ceiling with a lot of plant-based options. Just because something is plant-based, does that mean that it's a healthy option?
Yeah, you've got to hand it to industry. They're so creative, and they're jumping on the fact that everyone's going vegan nowadays. And so they're coming up with products, and they vary a lot. And some, like the old veggie burgers that have been around for, frankly, decades, were always pretty good. Very low in fat, just a couple of ingredients. It might be a bean burger, or it's made from soy or textured vegetable protein or something simple. The past few years, the manufacturers have decided they're going to use vegan foods to seduce the taste buds of meat eaters. So they're taking that veggie burger, and now they're adding a lot of stuff that was never in it before. A lot of coconut fat, for example. And that fat will raise your cholesterol, because coconuts and coconut oil, palm oil, those are really just about the only two vegetable foods that are vegetable fats that are really, really high in saturated fat. And every gram of the fat that they packed in there has 9 calories. So those foods are no longer slimming foods. They still serve a purpose. For the person who's a dyed-in-the-wool meat eater and who eats an Impossible Burger, I mean, it's marginally better than what he's eating before, and it proves to him that he doesn't need meat. That's good. But if you're already following a healthy vegan diet, what you really need is not that processed stuff so much. What you really need is simple foods, the beans, the grains, and the vegetables, and they can turn into wonderful foods, but they might be really better choices than some of the other things. Now, Chuck, really, really quickly, I don't want to have people feel like it's a terrible thing to ever have a processed food. If it's, your 14-year-old kid is having a birthday, and all the neighbor comes in, don't serve them lentil loaf. They're going to beat your kid up. If you serve veggie hot dogs, then that's going to be okay. And yes, they're a little processed, but it's not a bad food. It's not high in fat. It's relatively simple.
We have time for just a couple of more. We do have somebody right now, Dr. Barnard, who's wondering about going plant-based for the very first time, eating a plant-based diet, but they're concerned because they've been on so many diets previously, and none of them turned out to be sustainable. The longest they say that they lasted was 3 months. They had success for 3 months, and then the wheels came off. So when it comes to eating a plant-based diet and making sure not only you lose the weight, but keep the weight off, how does the plant-based diet actually benefit someone in that case?
Oh, what a great question. So many people, as you know, try various kinds of diets, and you try it for a while and you fall off the wagon. The beauty of a vegan diet or a plant-based diet is that it doesn't rely on restricting calories or cutting out carbohydrates. So what people very often find is after they've done it for a couple of weeks, they've kind of lost their taste for chicken wings. They found foods they like much better, and you're never hungry. You're not missing carbohydrate because you're having all the carbohydrates you want, but people lose weight, and then the weight loss rewards them, and it seems really easy, so they just kind of want to stick with it. And then they discover something else. They discover that there are cool products at the store, and websites, and books, and movies, and it sort of draws you in, and you want to learn more about it. But I have to say, where I think people are particularly vulnerable is if they are the lone ranger. If you're the only person who's doing this, and maybe you're in a family or a work group where other people are just not into healthy eating at all, you might find that the temptations to go back are stronger than they would be if you've got a network that supports you. So get the network. That can mean going online. That can mean watching, the exam room, where whatever gives you a group to get that little bit of injection of support once a week or once a day or whatever it is. Listen to podcasts, hook up with other people. You're going to discover that a lot of people are there. They're doing the same thing you are. And the feeling of being part of an important social group, that can keep you going at any moment of doubt. And you'll discover those moments of doubt just kind of stop coming after a while.
All right. Final question comes to us from Mark, goes back to what it was we were talking about at the top of the show. And Mark is wondering, have there ever been any studies whatsoever showing that it is impossible to lose weight past a certain age?
Oh, what a question. I guess everyone kind of thinks that, but no, we, in our research studies here, we have had people come in at just about every age, often with a lot of complications. They may have diabetes or really serious joint problems. And age is not a barrier to weight loss. And Dr. Dean Ornish showed that age was not a barrier to the healing process that occurs in the arteries. The key is a really healthy diet, getting the animal products out, keeping the grease out. I don't care how old you are. I also don't care how young you are. It's a healthy way to go at any age.
Basically, what you just said is it's never too late.
Never too late. You got it.
Never too late. Here's the cool thing, ladies and gentlemen. If you feel like you could use a little boost with your health and you are struggling with your weight, we do have a 12-week plant-based weight loss program coming up with Dr. Vanita Rahman and our wonderful dietitian, Karen Smith, as well. You can sign up for that at pcrm.org. Or if you want a little bit of one-on-one work, you can work with our experts, our doctors, or dietitians on staff at the Barnard Medical Center as well. Telemedicine visits are available in more than a quarter of the country, like a pretty sizable area. So to make your appointment today, call 202-527-7500 or log on to barnardmedical.org. Insurance is accepted. So barnardmedical.org, 202-527-7500. It's kind of like modern medicine, with a twist on preventative medicine and sustained medicine. That's a big thing that we talked about here today. And so we're not only going to get you on the right track, we're going to keep you there. And Dr. Barnard, I think that then could be the best medicine of all.
Yes, it's been a really wonderful thing. And I have to say the pandemic was not a friend to anybody, but it did cause us to greatly ramp up the telemedicine that we've had. So some people come in to see us here live and in person. Others come in by telemedicine. Some see a doctor. Some want to see the dietitian. Whatever it is, we're glad to help.
There it is, 202-527-7500 or barnardmedical.org for a full list of states where services are available. Dr. Barnard, appreciate your time today, my friend.
Thank you, Chuck.
All right. And if you feel like you've raised your health IQ by a point or two, go ahead and like this video and subscribe to this channel. We would greatly appreciate it. And also, I want to say a huge thank you to the Gregory J. Ryder Memorial Fund for their continued support of the Exam Room Live and the Physicians Committee, because it's helping all of us raise our health IQs today. And the Gregory J. Ryder Memorial Fund supports organizations just like the Physicians Committee that carry on the love that Greg had for animals. And they're doing it by promoting plant-based health and working to end animal abuse while emphasizing programs that promote systemic change and also benefit people. And you can learn more about them on their website right now. Just hop on to GregoryReiterFund.org. That's Gregory Reiter, spelled R-E-I-T-E-R, fund.org. And for today, my friends, that is all the time that we have. I want to say thank you again to Dr. Neal Barnard for being here, really helping us out, proving that weight gain does not have to be inevitable. We always have more control than we give ourselves credit for. So let's take that control. Let's eat that healthier diet. Let's shed those pounds and let's add some years to our life. Happy, quality, wonderful years at that. And to the crew behind the scenes, thank you guys so very much for making the magic happen. And to you exam roomies, thank you all for being here and making the show this wonderful thing that it is. For everyone here at the Physicians Committee, I am the weight loss champion, Chuck Carroll. We'll talk to you again soon. But until then, keep it plant-based.